mixed methodological approach, the current essay investigates the global trajectory of Ian Fleming's novel Casino Royale from 1953, which famously introduced the iconic British spy James Bond to the world, with a focus on Takarazuka Revue's interpretation of the British original, in terms of plot structure, dramaturgic design, character construction, and message mediation, with a simultaneous examination of Takarazuka Revue Company's divergence from its traditional business model and performance strategy, the strictly reinforced Japanization of Western artifacts. Takarazuka Revue Company's Casino Royale reveals an increasing self-awareness and concerted efforts of its administrators, actresses, directors, composers, script writers, conductors, etc., towards an authentic alignment with global challenges in recent years, in contrast with previous staging protocols, thus proactively overcoming Japan's steadily displayed reluctance to play a major role within the international community. Moreover, the juxtaposition of geopolitical tensions with socio-economic constraints in Takarazuka Revue Company's Casino Royale indicates its integration within the larger framework of mainstream media institutions, able both to successfully navigate the intricacies of the late modern entertainment industry, typically characterized by extreme volatility, and to gracefully exceed the expectations of a massive, staunchly conservative fan base. Ian Fleming's Casino Royale from 1953 stands as one of the most enduring and iconic entries in the James Bond franchise, offering a compelling blend of espionage, action, and intrigue. From its subsequent humble beginnings as a television adaptation up to its transformation into a global cinematic phenomenon, the story of Bond's high-stakes showdown with Le Chiffre has captivated audiences for decades. This essay analyzes Takarazuka Revue's eponymous performance from 2023, officially based on Ian Fleming's novel, but heavily influenced by 2006 Casino Royale, directed by Martin Campbell, with Daniel Craig in the lead role, and displaying its own interpretation of the plot, of the history, and of the representation of masculinity as embodied in its otokoyaku performance, that is, female impersonators of male roles in Takarazuka Revue Company, and their skillful versatility, which moves to the center of the analytical endeavor. Since its founding in 1914, Takarazuka Revue has played a significant role in Japan's cultural landscape, blending rigorous discipline, theatrical innovation, and shifting social paradigms. Traditionally associated with conservative gender politics and rigid socio-economic hierarchies, Takarazuka Revue employs military-style training methods and performance standards that surpass conventional expectations, simultaneously pushing the boundaries of technological advancement, audience demands, and the visions of cultural policymakers. Serving as both a reflective mirror of Japanese society and a predictive barometer of future trends, Takarazuka Revue's defining characteristic is its all-female cast who portray both male and female roles in the so-called otokoyaku and, respectively, musumeyaku performers. These performances are divided among 5 troupes, each bringing a diverse repertoire of productions to the stages of its 2 principal theaters, Takarazuka Grand Theatre in Western Japan and Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in Tokyo, in close proximity to the posh district of Ginza. With 10 performances weekly throughout the entire year, Takarazuka Revue presents a vast array of narratives spanning multiple genres, historical periods, and cultural settings. Characterized by opulent stage designs, elaborate and frequently changing costumes, intricate choreography, and live renditions of Western popular music, Takarazuka Revue productions blend spectacle with meticulous craftsmanship. The company's 1974 adaptation of The Rose of Versailles marked a defining moment in its history, aligning Takarazuka Revue closely with shoujo culture, or shoujo bunka, a cultural framework which constructs and negotiates femininity, female identity, and corporeality through the lens of young women's experiences. This aesthetic and ideological positioning exists within Japan's broader discourses on consumerism, sexuality, love, marriage, and reproduction. In recent years, especially since the beginning of the new era in Japanese historiography in 2019, the so-called Reiwa period, and even more accelerated since the big reset posited by the global pandemic of 2020 and 2022, a tremendous paradigm shift has been occurring with a renewed focus on expanding the traditional business model centered around deep fandom, referring to a rigidly outlined fan community composed mainly of stay-at-home housewives and female financially powerful seniors aged 35 and above, towards a more diverse consumers basis, to include male theater goers of all ages, reflected in correspondingly diversified performances to encompass a greater variety of preferences, interests, and ideals. Takarazuka Revue Company's decision to assign Casino Royale to the Cosmos Troupe underscores this evolution. Established in 1998, the Cosmos Troupe is the youngest of Takarazuka Revue's 5 ensembles and is often perceived as the most experimental, free from the established identities that characterize its sister troupes. As a result, it has become synonymous with innovation and non-conformity within Takarazuka Revue's tradition. The selection of Casino Royale, Ian Fleming's debut James Bond novel, and the foundation of a multi-generational, multi-billion-dollar franchise suggests an awareness on the part of Takarazuka Revue Company's administrators regarding their influential role in shaping audience perceptions. Through this production, Takarazuka Revue subtly engages in cultural pedagogy, guiding its predominantly female audience in navigating societal transformations and reconsidering traditional roles of motherhood and marriage. As to be shown in the forthcoming analysis, the collusion between the worldwide premiere of Casino Royale, Ian Fleming's first novel featuring James Bond, marking the inconspicuous inception of a franchise spanning multiple genres, several generations across geographical areas and billions of US dollars in revenues, as a live theatrical performance, and Cosmos Troupe's presumably progressive demeanor enacts a particular tension which had come to be associated with Takarazuka Revue's interpretation of Western cultural artifacts. Beyond straightforward appropriation or delightfully orchestrated political statements, there is a subtly mischievous proposal of an alternative understanding of the world, in which even the most aggressive heroes and villains can metamorphose into beneficial influences or at least corrective lessons for those around them, as for audiences at large. It is on the foundation of inconspicuous questioning of technological development and the focus on individual excellence located at the center of Martin Campbell's 2006 Casino Royale, with Daniel Craig in the lead role, that Takarazuka Revue's administrators conceptualized their version of Casino Royale in 2023 and manifested it as a pivotal performance in the revamping of its post-pandemic business model. Staged by Cosmos Troupe, a choice that determines in Takarazuka Revue Company's advertising and marketing strategy the message of each performance, Casino Royale, My Name is Bond, is loosely based on Ian Fleming's novel in its Japanese edition translated by Shiraishi Ro, published by Tokyo Sougensha in 2019, and remains faithful to Takarazuka Revue Company's general tendency when adapting Western plotlines. Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale takes over the primary characters and narrative structures, that of a confrontation between British secret agent James Bond with master terrorist Le Chiffre during a high-stakes gambling show-off at Casino Royale, and modifies it in accordance to Takarazuka Revue's own conventions, mostly encapsulated in its Violet Code, or Sumire Kodo. The Violet Code prohibits any non-stylized display of ugliness such as violent death, open sexuality, bloody encounters, as well as allusions to mundane events such as medical procedures, to which biological birth and death count on Takarazuka Revue stage, unless the dramaturgic logic explicitly requires it. Performed at Takarazuka Grand Theatre from 11 March 2023 until 17 April 2023, and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre from 6 May 2023 until 11 June 2023, and starring Makaze Suzuho as James Bond, Jun Hana as Delphine, and Serika Toa as Le Chiffre, Takarazuka Revue's version of Casino Royale was the remarkable result of the cooperation between Takarazuka Revue Company's masterful in-house veteran creators, author and director Koike Shuichiro, and composers Ota Takeshi, Takahashi Megumi, and Kai Masato. The story of Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale is set in 1968, as the voice-over in the opening of the performance announces, with the world in the grip of the Cold War, tacitly carried since the end of the Second World War between the West, with its capitalist societies and nations led by the United States of America, and the East, a communist conglomerate controlled by the Soviet Union. The two opposing blocs have been engaged in a persistent struggle for dominance, maintaining a state of confrontation without direct military conflict. Meanwhile, intelligence operatives from both sides, operating in secrecy, continue to wage covert battles on the front lines of this geopolitical rivalry. In Paris, anti-establishment protests, known as a general strike May 1968, break out, mainly among students and workers, calling for social change. Their rage is directed against capitalism, consumerism, American imperialism, and traditional institutions. After they are suppressed by police forces, the radicals merge into an underground organization calling itself the Red Army League. The performance itself starts as outstanding secret agent James Bond, codename 007, who had already been through fierce battles in the employment of MI6, the pinnacle of the elite British Secret Intelligence Service, receives order to neutralize a Soviet agent known as Le Chiffre. By employing his gambling skills, Le Chiffre seemed the commander of KGB operations in France, being suspected of fueling the ongoing unrest in Paris and France-wide. As a front business, Le Chiffre runs a nightclub in Paris, but he has been embezzling its proceeds. In fact, funds sent by the Soviet organization to the Red Army League, and is consequently in such a tight spot that he secretly has been searching for a buyer for the nightclub, while also planning to recover a quick fortune at the casino. Bond's mission is to use his gambling abilities to beat Le Chiffre and cut off his source of funds, and then to take him alive and force him to divulge any information he possesses. Discussed as a Jamaican millionaire, Bond first travels to Paris to survey a nightclub, where he intervenes to rescue Delphine, a student activist fleeing from the police during ongoing demonstrations. Delphine, a graduate student at the Sorbonne, is deeply committed to the pursuit of social justice and the eradication of global inequalities. She is also the romantic partner of Michel, a radical student who has gone into hiding with the Red Army League. Subsequently, Bond arrives at Casino Royale, situated in a luxurious hotel in Royale-les-Eaux, along the Atlantic coast of France, where he intends to challenge Le Chiffre at the baccarat table. There, he unexpectedly encounters Delphine once more, only to discover that she is the sole heiress to a vast fortune as the designated successor of the late Grand Duchess Natalia of the Romanov dynasty. In accordance with the Grand Duchess' will, Delphine has inherited the legacy of the imperial Russian family, who were executed during the Bolshevik Revolution in 1918. Coincidentally, other surviving Romanov descendants have also gathered at the same hotel, locked in an intense dispute over the selection of their next patriarch. As the casino's most prestigious annual event, the Night of the Baccarat commences. Bond, maintaining his cover as a wealthy Jamaican investor, takes his seat at the table where Le Chiffre is playing. However, once Lucifer uncovers Bond's true identity, their competition escalates into a high-stakes battle of wits and strategy. When Lucifer loses to Bond at the gambling table, he decides to target Delphine's inheritance, just as she is about to begin a relationship with Bond, who cannot stop thinking about her. With CIA agents, French intelligence officer, and Soviet spies joining the scene as well, Bond faces a series of crises in his pathway, but does what he does best: risks his life for the success of the mission while countering various conspiracies and dangers. The third performance of the calendar year 2023 and the last performance of the Japanese fiscal year 2022-2023, Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale was also the final performance or Sayonara Koen for top star Otokoyaku Makaze Suzuho and top star Musumeyaku Jun Hana, among several other performers, and the first ever Takarazuka Revue production to receive an international live stream for the Tokyo final performance or Senshuraku, literally Joy of Thousand Autumns, on 11 June 2023 via the Beyond Live platform, with subtitles in 8 different language options, such as English, Korean, Simplified and Traditional Chinese, Indonesian, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Thai. In addition to the unexpectedly controversial narrative focus, the Cold War, approximately 1 year after Russia's invasion of Ukraine initiated on 24 February 2022, but timely in terms of Takarazuka Revue Company's performance schedule planning, typically requiring between 12 and 15 months, and a unique allusion to current historical realities in Takarazuka Revue's post-Second World War history, perhaps apart from the notable and symbolical exception of 2003's Star Troupe's performance, A Song for Kingdoms, and its alignment with peacekeeping campaigns at the time in Japan, but translocated in ancient Egypt with its warring dreams of grandeur. Casino Royale marks the end of an era and launches at the same time the beginning of a new chapter in Takarazuka Revue's performance strategy and business model. This happens both narratively and meta-narratively, as to be detailed later on. To start with, the 2 previous performances of the calendar year 2023 staunchly validated the continuation of tradition Takarazuka Revue's performance strategy and business vision. Both Flower Troupe's Meyerling, staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in January 2023 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in February and March 2003, and Moon Troupe's Outen no Mon, The Tale of Young Sugawara no Michizane, staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in February and March 2023 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in March and April 2023, delve into stories of passion and magnificence, reviving 2 of Takarazuka Revue's most beloved thematic complexes. On the one hand, there is the tragical love story between partners in the highest echelons of the Western society, as revealed in Yuzuka Rei's portrayal of Rudolph, the Crown Prince of Austria and the son of the cult Empress Elisabeth Sisi of Austria and of Emperor Franz Joseph, and Hoshikaze Madoka's representation of Marie Vezera, a baron's daughter at the imperial court and Rudolph's lover despite all odds. On the other hand, there is the breathtaking orchestration of early Heian period, indisputably the golden age of Japanese classical history and the climax of cultural refinement, with Tsukishire Kanato as Sugawara no Michizane, the famed Heian period scholar, poet and politician, and Umino Mitsuki as Shoki, a fictional, obstinate female shopkeeper who deals in Tang dynasty goods, delivering credible on-stage recreations of the beloved characters from the eponymous, equally popular historical manga, that is, Japanese comics series, literally translated as The Southern Gate, written and illustrated by Yak Haibara, which had begun serialization in Shinchosha's seinen manga magazine targeted at young male readers, monthly coming bunch in October 2013, and has currently reached 19 volumes as of the time of writing these lines, February 2026. Apart from the narrative contents, the symbolical connotation of both troupes charges these performances with substantial significance. Among the 5 performing troupes of the Takarazuka Revue, Flower Troupe and Moon Troupe, both established in 1921, Snow Troupe, founded in 1924, Star Troupe, active between 1933 and 1939 and revived in 1940, 1948 and Cosmos Troupe, introduced in 1998, each is distinguished by its unique artistic identity, which in turn shapes the thematic and stylistic nuances of its performances. Moreover, the Flower Troupe, established in 1921, is widely regarded as the most prestigious, benefiting from larger budgets, opulent stage and costume designs, and performances that are particularly powerful and emotionally resonant. Similarly founded in 1921, Moon Troupe has played a pioneering role in the evolution of Takarazuka Revue's performing strategy, as it was responsible for staging the world premieres of Moon Paris in 1927, The Rose of Versailles in 1974, and Gone with the Wind in 1977. The troupe is particularly noted for its emphasis on ensemble performances, with a strong focus on expressive choral singing, as well as its extensive adaptations of Western dramatic works. Flower Troupe and Moon Troupe are not only the most longevous ensembles in Takarazuka Revue Company's organigram, but they arguably carry particular weight in integrating Takarazuka Revue within the universal circuit of cultural institutions and in mediating Western contents, ideologies, aesthetics to Japanese consumers. Thus, when subsequently Cosmos Troupe performed Casino Royale, it came as a natural conclusion and simultaneously as an optimist springboard. To start with, and as already briefly mentioned, Cosmos Troupe is the most progressive among Takarazuka Revue Company's ensembles, so that many of Cosmos Troupe's performances appear as pilot projects, with the administration virtually testing the boundaries of audiences. That is, whether audiences are ready, willing, able to accept new themes being addressed on stage, new approaches to old themes, new performance styles, etc. More often than not, such pilot projects fail due to audiences' unequivocal rejection, only to be rehashed 8 to 10 years later in a slightly modified manner as regular performances by a different troupe. In those cases, they are usually enthusiastically embraced. The combination between Cosmos Troupe's public image of forward performativity and Casino Royale's overly conservative, indeed somehow retrograde demeanor and message indicated an unexpected return to the idealized world of the 1960s, seen from a disenchanted historical distance of almost 60 years, and delivering a Takarazuka Revue-baked vision of how things should be, or at least become. One might argue that this seemingly unexpected return emerges as an unsurprising in fact shift in light of historical developments, with the debate on gender equality or gender equity, and the quest for alternative forms of work-family balance which would enable parents and children to spend more time together, and therefore to overrun discourses on intergenerational trauma, lack of emotional connection in metropolises of the world, endemic loneliness, mental exhaustion, despair. Furthermore, in connection with Star Troupe's restaging a few weeks later of 1789, The Lovers of Bastille, at Takarazuka Revue in June and July 2023, and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in July and August 2023, the Japanese version of the French musical 1789 Les Amants de la Bastille, with music by Dove Attia, Laurent Delors, Louis Delors, Rod Janois, Jean-Pierre Pilot, Benoît Poer, William Rousseau, and Olivier Schulteis, on lyrics by Attia and Vincent Bagun, and a book by Attia and François Chouquet, which had its world premiere on 10 October 2012 at Palais des Sports de Paris. Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale continues symbolically and realistically Takarazuka Revue Company's relentless pursuit of the appropriation of modernity, at least since 1927, by means of the parimono genre, with an intense focus on Paris due to its crucial role during the French Revolution in triggering, defining, and structuring modernity. Western modernity initially, and global modernity eventually. Grounded in 1933, the same year as the original Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre was inaugurated, but banned from performing between 1939 and 1948, Star Troupe brings forth strong, charismatic otokoyaku performers such as Kozuki Wataru and Yuzuki Reon in performances with memorable messages. Compared with the previous Moon Troupe's version from 2015, Star Troupe's 1789 The Lovers of Bastille brings into the foreground the importance of vibrant, decisive male personalities able to change the course of history and to redirect it into the right tracks. Rei Makoto's Ronan Mazurie, a young man whose father was shot dead by the authorities, and Maesora Hitomi's Olympe du Puget, the governess of the crown prince and who becomes Ronan's girlfriend, are far more than individual characters on their own journey through life in times of turmoil. They are symbols of the French Revolution, the ideological foundation of modernity, and they are actively employed in the redefinition or Japanization of modernity through performative appropriation. Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale touches only briefly France's capital. Still, it is there, in the middle of the riots, that James Bond encounters Delphine, incidentally a descendant of the former Russian imperial family, itself a hot topic in two recent Takarazuka Revue performances, both assigned to Cosmos Troupe, and its representation of the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 as part of a larger geopolitical reorientation. On the one hand, in 2017, 11 years after the Bolshevik Revolution put an end to the centuries-old Russian Empire and changed the history of the world, the performance The Land of Gods, The Twilight of the Romanovs, staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in August and September 2017 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in October and November 2017, with Asaka Manato and Reimi Urara in the lead roles, displayed in nostalgic tones of remembrance and pang the tableau of a wintry Russian aristocracy, entangled in its own twisted sense of importance and unable to sense the upcoming upheavals. Cosmos Troupes delivered touching reverberations of times long past, but lacking the atemporal tension from earlier performances based on Leo Tolstoy's monumental novel War and Peace from 1869, in performances staged by Star Troupe in 1988-1989, a subtle pretext to explore Napoleon Bonaparte's life and work, or his complex novel Anna Karenina from 1878, staged by Snow Troupe in 2001, by Star Troupe in 2008, and by Moon Troupe in 2019, which, like Gone with the Wind, allowed Takarazuka Revue's administrators to orchestrate once again modern visions on masculinity based on the main female characters' flaws and lack of existential direction, and by focusing on Count Alexei Kirillovich Vronsky, or Alyosha, who turns into the main character. In contrast, The Land of Gods investigates a symbolic return to the sacredness of rural life, which could transcend history's violence and past suffering in the light of a new beginning. Like Marie Antoinette, the Austrian Queen of France was guillotined due to her inability to see the reality metamorphosing in front of her own eyes, and who is one of the most celebrated and mourned characters in the popular culture of Japanese media. The Romanovs are seen as ill-fated figures, swallowed by the waves of history, inevitably intertwined with the dramatic shifts triggered by mechanisms of popularity and completely cut off from their intrinsic significance. On the other hand, 3 years later, in late 2020, Anastasia breaks away with the tradition of hesitant performance strategy and public display of education conformity by eviscerating the Parimono subgenre with naturalist insertions a la Émile Zola and reframing it in dimensions reminiscent of Fyodor Dostoevsky's rawness. In Takarazuka Revue's Anastasia, a huge parable on the protective power of amnesia and the benefits resulting from not always remembering the past, at least not too accurately, is being told with the main male character Dimitri, without family name, admirably portrayed by Makaze Suzuho, a man of questionable morality, turning to the right pathway in contact with genuine aristocracy which transcends poverty and betrayal, as represented by Anya or Anastasia and her gracious enactment by Hoshikaze Madoka. Staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in November and December 2020 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in January and February 2021, Cosmos Troupe's version of Anastasia was based on Anastasia the Musical, with music by Stephen Flaherty and lyrics by Lynn Ahrens on a book by Terence McNally, which premiered on Broadway at Broadhurst Theatre in April 2017, after its initial world premiere in 2016 in Hartford, which in turn originated in Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's animated musical movie Anastasia from 1997. The female main character's absence of a clearly outlined past hinders her emergence as a full-fledged citizen. Simultaneously, it allows for an infinity of potential futures to take shape, initially blurry, on the horizon of historical manifestations, counterpointing Anya's silhouette and her shy walls among the many shadows haunting the derelict imperial palace and its symbolical ramifications in interwar France. Takarazuka Revue's Anastasia echoes the imperialist ethos and overt paternalism of the pre-war Monparis from 1927, embedding these themes within the emotional charged dynamic of the Otokoyaku's composed detachment and the Musumeyaku's enduring submission. This interplay subverts the conventional portrayal of the disempowered individual, instead reimagining them as a hero defined by longing and paradoxically a sense of belonging. Much like in The Land of Gods, the production reinforces Takarazuka Revue's axiological ideal, wherein generosity and spiritual enlightenment reframe the notion of humanity not as a site of competition, but as a space for playful togetherness. Underlying this representation is a deeper aspiration to position Japan, as envisioned through Takarazuka Revue's artistic lens, as a legitimate successor to the world's last two great empires, the Russian Empire prior to its transformation into the Soviet Union and the United States of America, an ambition which subtly permeates the production, embedding itself within the subconscious of its audiences. In this train of thought, Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale not only brings on stage one of the most iconic symbols of masculinity, James Bond, which transcends US-American-induced hegemony and sways France's territory on a mission both treacherous and divisive, requiring him to overcome his own natural instincts and to obey his sense of patriotism, commitment to his duty, professional integrity. Equally important, his encounter with Delphine is a symbolical display of the two worlds they belong to and their incongruent values. Within the dramaturgic logic of Takarazuka Revue's approach to history, Delphine's participation in the street protests accentuates the distance from the cruel realities of Imperial Russia with its blatant socio-economic inequalities and simultaneously reflects the post-Second World War pro-communism ideologies held by French intellectuals. While each of them can, and eventually does indeed, move beyond individual and national limitations, there is no simple, unified, clear-cut solution to the world's problems. Despite light-hearted interventions like the comical and not distinctively politically correct character Zweistein, Einstein's rival to the Nobel Prize and his nefarious counterpart in the scientific community, the overall atmosphere of the performance is unexpectedly bleak. Performed at a key moment in Takarazuka Revue's recent history, Casino Royale opens the pathway for subsequent performance to address less typical but nonetheless burning issues, such as technology with its both positive and negative sides, in Snow Troupe's A Dream in Lilac, the pride of the Droysen family, staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in April and May 2023 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in June and July 2023, and the continued deconstruction of Japanese pre-modernity in Flower Troupe's Singing Lovebirds, based on the 1939 eponymous musical comedy movie directed by Makino Masahiro, starring Kataoka Chiezo and Shimura Takashi, staged at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in July and August 2023 and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in September and October 2023, while exploring new directions for the future in two truly revolutionary performances: Cosmos Troupe's Pagad, Cagliostro, the mysterious magician of the century, based on the 1949 film Black Magic, directed by Gregory Ratov, which in turn extracted its narrative line from the novel Joseph Balsamo by Alexandre Dumas, Père, published in 1853 and planned at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in September, October and November 2023, and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in November and December 2003, and Snow Troupe's Boiled Doyle on the Toil Trail, based on the life of Arthur Conan Doyle, and planned at Takarazuka Grand Theatre in November and December 2023, and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre in January and February 2024. Tragically, the death by suicide of one of the Cosmos Troupe's members in late September 2023, and the subsequently emerged allegations and accusations of harassment, overwork, improper labor environment, abusive practice, and rehearsal conditions led to the cancellation of all Cosmos Troupe's scheduled performances, both at Takarazuka Grand Theatre and at Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre for 2023, and to the partial cancellation of Snow Troupe's scheduled performances at Takarazuka Grand Theatre. The regular performance schedule was reprised at the beginning of the new year 2024, while investigative and administrative efforts were carried out in the background with the goal of normalizing and improving work conditions for actresses. Since its initial publication in 1953, Casino Royale has delivered several firsts. It was Ian Fleming's first novel to introduce the super spy James Bond to the world, followed by the facts of being the first James Bond novel to be adapted as a daily comic strip in the second half of 1958, and of being turned into a cinema-chaotic parody in 1967. Almost 4 decades later, it was the first movie in the James Bond franchise to question its main character's infallible charisma and to present him as a vulnerable, emotionally complex human in Daniel Craig's 2006 enactment, in his first portrayal of the iconic British secret agent. When Takarazuka Revue adapted Casino Royale, it inadvertently contributed to another series of firsts. Apart from being the first non-Western adaptation ever of any narrative structure in the James Bond franchise, Casino Royale is undoubtedly a climactic celebration of Takarazuka Revue's long-standing theatralization of time and space, as it brings together in one single performance allusions to the two great revolutions which shattered the world and shaped modernity while touching the indelible parimono genre. At the same time, it directly references ongoing global events for the first time in the institution's history and transcending its pre-war and wartime distorted propaganda while linking the present to significant events in the recent past, and thus acknowledging the circularity of history. Takarazuka Revue's Casino Royale's dramaturgic architecture reveals more than a set of scriptwriting, directorial and compositional skills combined in the mastery of the theatrical medium. In Casino Royale, a freshly renewed statement on the theatrocratic power of live performances, musical or not, is displayed and glamorously orchestrated. The musical live theatre has become life itself, not merely a mirror to or a barometer of the society it belongs to or of the world it tries to represent. More than an institution, musical live theatre is a phenomenon which creates history from the geopolitical tensions of the present, while incorporating the past towards a future it actively, dynamically, compassionately seeks to co-create. After the tragic events which disturbingly interrupted Takarazuka Revue's project of reshaping and rechronicling the world in the last quarter of 2023, the vigorous start into 2024 with new energy, vitality, courage showcases the continued, undefeatable commitment to individual excellence, metamorphosing into collective excellence, which has been Takarazuka Revue Company's hallmark since its inception 114 years ago. Thank you and welcome to the future.